Hello, everybody, and welcome to the 63rd episode of the PB Political Podcast. I'm Eshan.
My name's Cameron Cummings.
And I'm Myles.
And today we are talking third GOP presidential debate that is being hosted, if you're listening to this Wednesday, today in the state of Florida in Miami. And it will be featuring 5 candidates. It'll be featuring Ron DeSantis, the governor of Florida, former governor of South Carolina, Nikki Haley, businessman Vivek Ramaswamy, Senator Tim Scott of South Carolina, and former governor of New Jersey, Chris Christie. So, with all that being said, welcome to the podcast, Cam. It's been a while, and also welcome back to Myles. It's been a while, but we're back here talking debate. Boddicker couldn't make it due to another obligation, but yeah. So, opening thoughts. What are y'all expecting on it tomorrow? What do y'all want to see?
Right now the bar is at lowest it can possibly be right now. After the second debate, I mean, how about we get some organization? I'd love to see that. This is you're running for one of the most powerful positions in the world, so let's not act like we're on a playground arguing, about Marvel or something. It's like let's have some decorum, please. But it's anything's up in the air. I was telling Eshan before we started recording, I still believe the only person that has a chance in the Republican Party, like a long shot chance of, like the biggest chance of beating President Trump, is probably Nikki Haley. Following, probably Ramaswamy. And then there's a massive gap. I would have said Pence, but he dropped. So he's out of my potential people that could rival him. And I guess after that, it'd probably be Chris Christie, because I'm putting him so low purely because his whole point is attacking Trump, and people are getting old of it, like sick of it. They tried voting for the lesser of two evils. You're not going to be able to spin that back and do it again.
Are you hating on Ron DeSantis? Wait, hold on. Are you hating on Ron DeSantis because he's wearing heels? Is that what this is, Cam?
No. I just think Ron DeSantis is one of the worst possible choices imaginable. Literally anybody but Ron DeSantis.
All right.
And because he wears elf shoes, so it makes me less trusted.
All right, Myles, go ahead. Sorry about that. I had to ask.
Yeah. This is a very critical debate. The first one, there's probably not a debate where we have that amount of viewership. However, Iowa's coming very, very soon. It's less than 2 months away, and there needs to be somebody who separates themselves from the rest of the pack. And like Cameron mentioned, I'm looking at Nikki Haley to be that person. And I know I volunteer for the campaign, so I may be coming in a little bit biased, but the polling is telling. She's the only candidate right now who is increasing in her funds. She's getting a lot of new donors, as well as increasing in the polls. She has matched Ron DeSantis, or is passing him in many polls, and she's got. But it's also a last effort for people like Vivek Ramaswamy, who his numbers, although they went through a quick surge, falling back down. Mike Pence is out. Chris Christie's on his last legs. This is showtime, baby. It's about to get real. I still think Trump gets the nomination, but we'll see what happens. You never know with Trump's indictments what could happen. We'll see.
Yeah, I mean, looking at Nikki Haley, not my favorite. I think I've bashed her plenty in other episodes. I just think that her, she's from that Bush era of Republicanism, which I think a lot of people clearly, when President Trump was elected, rejected. So it's kind of interesting seeing that her rise is coming. Of course, she hasn't hit the 20, 30% in any polls yet, which would, I think, where we start looking at, a big chunk of the electorate is looking at Nikki Haley. She's still, and not to bash Nikki Haley too much, because she was at 3% coming out of the first debate. She's up on the 538 average of the Iowa polling, which is what I'm looking at, because Iowa was the first contest. She's at 13.9% in the state of Iowa. 3% behind Ron DeSantis, and then 30% behind President Trump. But I think it's pretty interesting that, Nikki Haley's surging at the right time. She definitely I don't know. I don't know what it is exactly, but she's tapped in. It might be the donors because she has a huge donor base behind her. Big donors, especially mega donors, are really behind Nikki Haley. She's tapping. She's peaking at the right time. That's something that Vivek Ramaswamy, like you said, definitely wanted to do, and you can see that bump coming in before the first debate. But then after the debates, he's definitely trickled off. Right now in Iowa, at least, where he's never been too strong in Iowa, but he's at 4.4% behind Trump, DeSantis, Haley, and Tim Scott. So not too good for him. So yeah, I mean, Nikki Haley does look like the. And I mean, I guess are we just all counting out Ron DeSantis now? I mean, I guess like he's been static, so he's actually dropped more than anything since he first announced. And I mean, like he hasn't really hit it. He's never.
His own party in the state of Florida are not like supporting him.
I guess
and
it's
I
tough.
think once that started coming out and how like people within Florida, like their governor, they were not rocking with him. I think that was like the beginning of the end for Ron DeSantis.
I guess yeah. I mean, Myles, you can comment after this. Go ahead, yeah.
I think, Ron DeSantis, he's proof that money does not buy you an election. And the more money he gets, the less he has in the polls. Like Cameron was saying, in Florida, I saw a poll today. He's down like 30 points, 40 points in his own home state to President Trump. Now, I know it's also President Trump's home state, but DeSantis is the governor, not just the governor, but he's the incumbent. His campaign is tanking. He might be full plug now because the GOP needs to unite behind one candidate. I don't know who that's going to be, but I would hope that this field continues to narrow, and that's the best chance of beating President Trump. We'll see what happens.
Yeah, and there's 5 candidates in this debate, right? So there's obviously Trump is declining to appear. He's actually doing an event in Hialeah, Florida, which is pretty close to Miami. But 5 candidates: DeSantis, Haley, Scott, Ramaswamy, Christie. And this actually turns out, according to Politico, the smallest debate since February 2016, when we had Ben Carson, former Surgeon and Housing and Urban Development Secretary, Senator Ted Cruz, former Governor of Ohio John Kasich, and Senator Marco Rubio of Florida, and President Trump were all on the stage before Super Tuesday. So that's the last one we've seen, the last small debate you could say. And yeah, the field definitely needs to drop. What do you guys think? Let's talk about the field now. So going into the debate, we still have a decent amount of candidates, right? I mean, there's some candidates that aren't making debate stages that we can, I guess, write off for that reason because they're not really making impact in any way on these nationally televised debates. So of the 5, Scott, Ramaswamy, Haley, Christie, and DeSantis, who do y'all think drops out? First thing, who do you guys think is going to perform the best? And then who do y'all think is going to drop? Like, who do you think is going to perform the worst?
I guess I'll start it. Who do I think? I think who will perform best? Nikki Haley, probably. She has the momentum. She's been getting the donors. This is her chance, to jump at, what the momentum she's getting to show people she's a legitimate candidate. Who do I think's not going to perform? Everyone else is on the chopping block. I'm not even going to lie to you. DeSantis, he's been, trickling off, and being in the home state of Florida, I don't know if that's going to help him or hurt him. So I think that's interesting to see. But who I think will realistically drop next would either be Chris Christie or Scott.
Yeah, I think Tim Scott is the first one to drop out of the 5 remaining. I've never met a Tim Scott supporter. I think the majority of his fan base is in the Carolinas, specifically South Carolina. And after Iowa, I'd for sure see him dropping out. I know he's gained a little bit of steam in the polls. Not enough, though. I think the most I've seen him at is like maybe 9, probably an average. I don't know. You got the numbers in front of you, Eshan. I'd guess the average is somewhere between 5 and 6.
Yeah, he's at 7 in Iowa, and that's where he's really basing his campaign. So.
Yeah, he was quiet in the first debate. Second debate, they kind of egged him on a little bit. He had a little bit of a rivalry there with Nikki Haley. I see him going out soon. And then Chris Christie. So Chris Christie, he's not very popular outside of the Northeast. If there was no Northeast and no New Hampshire primary, I'd say he'd drop out. But I think for him, it's a wait and see. If he can carry double-digit numbers in New Hampshire and Iowa, he probably stays in. But if not, he's out. And then DeSantis, I could see DeSantis waiting a little bit. But, after the first few contests, if he's not anywhere near Trump, he's out. I think Haley would stay in the longest, even if she's not in second place, even if DeSantis ends up being that second person, because, look, I was in a meeting today with the campaign, and I'm excited for tomorrow's debate. I think I'm allowed to say this. She's going to be very aggressive tomorrow, and I would look at a rivalry with Ron DeSantis coming tomorrow night. I didn't tell you that, okay? But just look out for it because it's coming. She wants to distinguish herself as the alternative to Trump. Notice how I said the, not a. So, once again, we'll see what happens very soon.
Yeah, and I think one thing that will help her, if that's her goal, and that's a little bit of maybe a PB Political exclusive there for Myles. Shout out to Myles for that. I think one thing that's going to help her, and I think actually one thing that would have helped her much more if this debate was 2 weeks earlier, has been all the Israel, the commotion and the war in Israel and Palestine. So I think at the beginning of that, so a month ago now, October 7th, right, the attack on Jerusalem, or in Israel, I can't keep all this straight, but a month ago, everybody was screaming for just ruthless attacks on Palestine, on Hamas, who have committed acts of terror, yes, fair enough. But now that the situation's evolved a month later, there's been a lot more talk about ceasefires, about humanitarian pauses. And I think a little bit of that, the initial, anger, not that it's subsided, but it's definitely taken a backseat in the American discourse, not just worldwide, where actually worldwide there's been a lot of pro-humanitarian language, I guess. But in the U.S., too, it's starting to break through now because of just blatant war crimes on both sides, things like that. A lot of things that are coming out of people we don't really like to see in the United States. We don't see a lot being protected as we are. So I think that's I think that Nikki Haley, if I had to assume, her strategy would have been come out hard on defending Israel and be ruthless towards Palestine. If this was 2 weeks ago, right? If this debate was a couple weeks earlier, now I don't think that strategy would work as much.
It's passion and burning in a heartbeat.
Yeah, and you guys can that's just something that I feel like will definitely be a big part of the debate, as it should be. But I'm interested to think what you guys see what you guys think about how that situation's evolved and how it's going to play out in the debate tomorrow.
I've heard that tomorrow's debate is going to focus heavily on foreign policy, specifically the Israel-Hamas conflict. I agree with you. Nikki Haley is the only candidate on stage to have an abundance of foreign policy experience. She was an ambassador to the United Nations, and she's going to show that off tomorrow night. I'm looking forward to seeing that. As far as what you were talking about, how the media has kind of changed the narrative now, or it was everything very pro-Israel. They had the right to defend themselves, and now there's a lot of talk about civilian casualties, which I completely understandable. It's not the American way of doing things, as you said, Eshan. But Nikki Haley is going to bask on the fact that Israel has a right to defend themselves. Hamas is using citizens as human shields, and they will not stop no matter what. That's not my opinion. I'm just saying what Nikki Haley is probably going to talk about.
So, but will that work on the? Do you think that's gonna work on an evolving American electorate? That's oh wait, actually maybe we should have a ceasefire. What do you think? What's in the fall? What do you think's gonna happen?
I think the vast majority of Americans are on the Israeli side. I think it's a very loud minority of people who believe that Israel is some kind of racist state that is genocidal, as Rashida Tlaib said. Look, nobody wants civilians to die. It's really, really sad to see. But this is not Israel's fault. This is all on Hamas and on the Palestinians for electing Hamas to their government. That's the way I see it. Now, war, bad things happen. Once again, I just want to say again, I don't think civilians dying is a good thing, and it's often not justifiable. But Hamas has brought them on themselves.
Yeah,
brought this on themselves. Sorry, I'm tired. It's like 11:45.
No, you're totally good. Yeah, we're recording this
on
podcast really late. We're not going to talk about Israel the whole time. I just want to Cam, I'll let you respond. But 1 second, Congresswoman Rashida Tlaib has been censured by the House of Representatives over comments using pretty, I think from what I understand, the same rhetoric that Hamas has used in the past. Now, First Amendment rights, interesting one there, but she has been censured formally by the House of Representatives, and that's where we're at there. Outside of that, Cam, going back to just not even the issue of the war, and I'm sorry that I had you kind of expound on it more, Myles, but just the way that the American people are kind of viewing the conflict as it's evolved. How do you think that's going to play into the strategies? 'Cause I'm sure they know people are starting to see more of oh, we should have a humanitarian corridor or something like that. A better one or something like that. What do you think that's going to inform the candidates for tomorrow, if it is going to be very foreign policy heavy, like Myles is saying?
It most definitely will, but I think it'll also tie back to domestic. Over the past, 3 years, we've sent so much money, to foreign adversaries as, internally, everyone's having issues, and as we send more and more money, it's very obvious, and people are upset. People are pissed, and they're sick of it. They're sick of sending money for Israel. They're sick of sending money to Ukraine. They don't care. They're like, hey, we have housing crisis. We can't afford groceries. We can't afford rent. We can't afford shit. So I think people are getting upset of and I see the ceasefire and people why they want to do that. But most people are like, we don't care. How about we worry about, people being in more debt than ever, student loans, the repayments coming back. It's not like people, were just, holding all that student loan money and now they have it all ready. They were spending, on their rent, on their food, on their kids, on their car notes. So, that's another, $3,000 bill they haven't seen in 3 years, and they don't, they can't financially afford. And we're sending billions upon billions upon billions overseas to the Middle East. People are sick of it, And, Myles said it was a very loud minority. I think that minority can and has been making a lot of noise, and it's making a lot of waves of people, saying, we're sick of this. So, Nikki Haley gets up there and says, we're going to send more money to them, or anyone gets up there and says, Ukraine needs more money, Israel needs more money, we need to keep funding this. A lot of people are going to check out, me included.
Yeah, I think that's actually one way to bring other candidates into this. That's the biggest way I can see Vivek Ramaswamy, particularly, who's been very vocal on stopping or at least heavily auditing the aid to Ukraine, and also to Israel. He's been, of course. So initially, he was pretty Israel. We stand with Israel. In general, yeah, we support Israel, but also we need to consider what actions Israel takes will affect future generations of Palestinians, future potential extremist activity. That was a very nuanced take that I think that he got a lot of flack for, with the whole the Israeli PACs and all the lobbyists and even just the public. The other candidates really bashed him on that. Nikki Haley famously bashed him on that on the debate stage. That's one way for someone who's been tanking since really the first debate. He can make a comeback by playing into the more of why would we send more money overseas when, and then water, we don't have adequate water systems in Mississippi. I know about in Jackson, we don't have infrastructure's crumbling across things like that. That's one way I think any candidate can pivot it around. But I think if someone does that, it'll be Ramaswamy, just because every other candidate's been so brutally like pro is not brutal. Brutal is a bad word, but very bluntly pro-Israel and like pro whatever the Israeli government does. That I think that could create a lane for somebody like Vivek to get back into it. But also the thing is that President Trump will probably occupy that same lane because he's smart politically. He knows where the winds are going to go, and I think that's something that we could see. Maybe I don't know if that's going to happen, but that's one avenue that maybe I don't know if the people that are watching the debate in real time will agree with Vivek or any other candidate. But I think when you get to like the younger population, especially, that's something that will be more popular. I don't know if you have any thoughts on that.
I think you make some good points. Ramaswamy is the only out of the 5 candidates on tomorrow's debate stage that has questioned our aid to Israel and to Ukraine. He is the only.
He was the first one for Ukraine. I think DeSantis is kind of taking that over, but yeah, same point. Yeah.
Oh yes, yeah. I think one of the reasons he says is there's no end goal with sending money to Ukraine. That what is the end goal? When is this war going to end? Are we just giving money to something it's just a donation? But I disagree with that line of thinking. I don't know if this is about me or about the debate. I think other candidates will say that if Ukraine falls, all of Eastern Europe falls, and in the future. But you get what I'm saying.
Yeah.
I like what you said. I think that's Ramaswamy's chance to make his own lane and differentiate himself, which he already has from the other candidates. I could certainly see another surge from him. Once again, my thoughts are all over the place. It's like 11:51, so sorry about that.
No, you're totally good. We're recording this really late because of time. We had a lot of issues on like getting everything together. So it's 11:51 Central right now. We're not gonna go too much longer. What else do y'all want to see, or do you think we'll see outside of like infighting and Israel talk, foreign policy talk? What else do you guys expect to see tomorrow?
Infrastructure always gets brought up. Student loans. I said that gets brought up. Especially with those payments coming back. I'd say that over anything will probably come up.
What one other thing, Myles, what do you think real quick before I ask this question?
Yeah, well, tonight's election results, especially the abortion measure and marijuana measure in Ohio, that's going to be talked about quite a bit, I think. And then that's going to be one of the most pressing issues because it's so new.
Yeah, I don't know how the questions work for them. I don't know if they already have the questions prepared, but they absolutely need to talk about off-year election night, which is tonight. Tonight being Tuesday, November 7th. Huge results across the state or the country. A big one electorally for Republicans, because obviously like the marijuana issue, abortion issue, not necessarily partisan, although you can kind of assume where people stood on that. In the Virginia House of Delegates and in the Virginia State Senate, Democrats control both bodies now. They flipped. I believe they flipped the Senate and they kept the House. But point being, Glenn Youngkin, the Republican governor, does not have a trifecta. Actually, Democrats will be controlling the legislative process and it'll make him a very ineffective governor. There was talk of Glenn Youngkin actually jumping into the presidential race in this next week. I feel like now, if they had won that trifecta, maybe, but now I don't think it's going to happen because, he couldn't win. He did win his election. He turned Virginia, which is like a Biden plus 13, I believe, or Biden plus 8, something like that, to a red state, at least electorally on that race. But I don't think he's going to jump in now just because, he did not win. They lost tonight. And it was weird because they brought up abortion. And abortion is obviously a failing issue for any Republican. Anyone who wants to put any sort of restriction on abortion, if the word like ban comes up, you're gonna lose. They lost in Kansas and Kentucky, 2 pretty red states on the federal level at least, and then they lost in Ohio with 56.1% voting yes to establishing a constitutional right to an abortion, with 95%, more than 95% of the votes in. That's something that I really do need them to talk about because not only will that forces a real reckoning on the issue for Republicans, because if you want to win and you're going to be like, oh, hey, we're going to ban abortion, they're not going to win. You're not going to win nationwide. people are going to turn out like crazy. So I don't know. Is there anything else that you guys think that might come up?
They're going to talk about Trump again. I think there's always new stuff with him, with his business over-evaluation.
What do y'all think? Do you guys think Trump will end up being the real winner, like every other debate so far? I mean, even though he's not showing up, which he should show up, in my opinion, just seeing the absolute child's play in the last debate, especially, I don't see how Trump isn't a winner of this next debate. What do you guys think about that? Just his impact.
I think Trump has nothing to lose by being on the stage. I think he should be up there too, but he's got it in the bag. Someone can, like I always say, separate themselves from the rest of the pack, then that candidate will be the winner. But if no one does that, he's the winner.
Yeah. Cameron, what do you think? Anything else to add on that? We'll wrap it up here.
Not really. I mean, it's the same thing that happened the last two times. He came out and, even though he didn't say a word, came out the winner of the debate. But I think this is their time for them to step up, and distinguish themselves. But this is their last shot to do that.
Yeah, I agree with all that. So that's the GOP debate recap. We'll be back. Hopefully we'll be back to do a review episode. We never end up doing one. Last time it was because the debate was so bad that there was nothing to review. The first time we just couldn't get it done. But 2 months and 8 days away from the Iowa caucuses. So we are coming up on the first contest to elect the nominees for president, at least on the Republican side. That'll be a lot of fun. Thank you all for joining me. Almost midnight. Sorry for keeping y'all this late. But
one thing,
go ahead.
Being a Mississippi resident currently, the election today for governor was held. 95% of the votes are in currently, and Tate Reeves won 51%, with Brandon Presley trailing with 46.6%. Tate Reeves having about 406,000 votes, with Brandon Presley sitting around 367,000.
Yeah, massive effort from Brandon Presley, the cousin of Elvis Presley, something like that.
Yeah. He won a lot more spots. Obviously, he won Jackson. He won the Starkville area too.
Yeah,
he won by a pretty large margin.
Yeah, he won with 56% of the votes in Oktibbeha. Okay, whatever. But yeah, Mississippi could have been a shock upset for the Democrats there. Not going to happen, it seems. Tate Reeves obviously has a lot of issues with corruption, and that will be, I'm sure, I can see Brandon Presley running again in 4 years. Who knows? But anyways, that's for another episode. Thank y'all for listening. Sorry for keeping y'all this late, Myles, Cameron, but thank y'all for joining me. Make sure y'all tune in to the third GOP debate. I don't know what channel it's on. I think it's MSNBC. But yeah, go to pppolitical.com, pppolitical.al. Y'all can find Cam and Myles on our website, our TikTok, especially TikTok for Myles, and everywhere else. So thank y'all for listening. I'm Eshan Pokrell.
My name is Cameron Cummings.
And I'm Myles Golub.
And goodbye.